DraftKings has released their 2022 NFL DFS Week 1 salaries, and we're going to take a deep dive at the running back position, giving our initial thoughts on who to target and who to avoid, all coming up next. Hello, everyone. I'm EKELER.
And I'm WIley, and we're the Fantasy Football Consultants. Eric will be giving our initial takes of the Week 1 main slate on DraftKings, and in this video, we're covering running backs. You can also find links in the description for Week 1 DraftKings and FanDuel shows that will discuss the main slate for other positions.
Friendly word of warning. Now, news is going to come out after we post this video that will alter some of our opinions, which is why we'll be releasing a full DraftKings Week 1 cash lineup and GPP plays closer to the start of the season. So if you haven't yet, please hit that red subscribe button to make sure you don't miss any of our future content.
Can I make a quick push for our fantasy FFC community? We want to hear from you in the comment section. Tell us your favorite Week 1 running back for this week and why. Let's go to the studio. The first time in a long time, we look up here and we see McCaffrey slipping down. $600. He's at $8,500. Remember, he was every week 10,000, 10,000, 10,000, 10,000.
Yeah,
what's going on?
Yeah, and usually there's always some running back that's $10,000. So DraftKings is giving us a break here by pricing down some of these top guys.
Yeah, and I think as you were mentioning when we were talking earlier, really the top 4 guys are the ones to really focus on. If you could find a way to get the 2 of these guys in your lineup this week, running backs usually pays off early in the season as well. There seems to be a little more predictability to what you're going to get in terms of touches. So super excited about the opportunity there. Eric?
I agree. You want to get at least one of these 4. So let's talk about them. Let's first talk about Jonathan Taylor. You may say, whoa, Jonathan Taylor, the number 1 guy. Why not? He was the best back last year. He had a combined total 500 yards more than everyone else. Now, granted, the next 2 guys on the list, Henry and McCaffrey, were hurt, but he had a great last year. And 23 years old, he's in the prime behind a great offensive line, and who I think, Michael, a QB upgrade going from Wentz to Matt Ryan. Great game environment, 26 implied total, 8-point favorite. You want to be a big favorite against one of the league's worst rush defenses. Man, not a whole lot not to like about Jonathan Taylor.
Yeah, I completely agree with the matchup at Houston. He went off, especially towards the end of the season last year when a couple other people were injured. He's just going to continue to up his usage. He's a young guy. He's got fresh legs. This is, I think, worth the extra dollars, but so are some of these other guys, Eric. Yeah,
Derrick Henry at 8,600. We know he's still a talent. And at 28 years old, last year we got hurt, but he was outstanding when he was healthy. 138 combined yards with 10 TDs in 8 games. You know, with Henry, it's just a matter of time which games he's going to go off. And a lot of the traits of a game which you go off is set here. Home favorite, 6.5 points against a bottom 10 defense. Good implied total of 25 points.
Yeah, and I think that I think it's hard to think this, but we could see Tennessee rely even more on the run this year than they have in the last couple of years. I think that's hard to say. And so Derrick Henry obviously will be benefit from that. And I like that he actually got used in the passing game a little bit more last year, which was a little more rare than normal.
Yeah, and I like what you just said about the line more in the run game with the exodus of A.J. Brown. That very well may be the case. Christian McCaffrey, I think he does qualify as another guy that's one of my favorites as well as Michael's favorite. Michael, you know, people are down on him because, oh, he's got injured. You don't have to worry about that as much in daily fantasy football. We just need him to stay healthy through one game. And the reality is, yes, he's been injured a lot in the last 2 years, but over the last 2 years, when he has been playing in his 8 healthy games, averaged 135 total yards, 6.5 receptions, which is huge on DraftKings, with an average of a TD a game. So I really like this guy for this week.
Yeah, and you know who's really good to his running backs and is Baker Mayfield. Partly because he makes the offensive coordinator rely so much on the run. We've never seen McCaffrey this cheap before. His upside is just so high and his floor is so high. I really like the McCaffrey play. I still can't believe how inexpensive these running backs are towards the top of the top end. We have to spend money on running back this week.
Yes. And the last member of this quartet is Austin Ekeler, and he deserves to be in there. But when in doubt, folks, try to get as many players in the Las Vegas and LA Charger game, as well as the Kansas City and Arizona game. But with Austin Ekeler, now he had 20 TDs last year, which is just incredible. I can't imagine that will be reproduced. And they're talking about reducing his load. But here's the question I have, Michael. Will they reduce his load around the goal line? Because that's what's been so impressive to me. Yes, I always knew he was a guy that's just unbelievable pass catcher. But to add to his repertoire to be at the goal line, he got 9 touchdowns last year with runs that started inside the 10.
To me, this is actually the for sure pick. He's a little bit cheaper than some of these guys. The Raiders defensive line was horrible against the run last year. I think that's going to continue again this year. They didn't really make too much improvement there. And Ekeler, pound for pound, is the strongest guy in the NFL. If you watch his videos, we've seen him before. He's just so impressive physically, which is why I think they continue to give him the ball.
Dalvin Cook is always going to get his carries. My question is, in this new offense, is he going to go back to getting a lot of receptions? So important on DraftKings. I'm going to take a wait and see approach on Dalvin Cook because I like the guys that are just ahead of him more.
Yeah, we saw him priced really high last year all season long as well because of the dual threat that he was. Green Bay, as you can see here, is tough on running backs. I just think he's not worth the $300 savings from Austin Ekeler for what we just talked about, and certainly not from some of the other guys above him as well. Wait and see is the right approach.
No offense, moving on to Alvin Kamara, has fallen off the cliff at running back more than New Orleans. They only had 12 rushing touchdowns last year. That's half the amount that they averaged over the 4 years prior. Alvin Kamara's receptions fell off big time. 5.5 receptions per game dropped to 3.5 receptions per game. What they did, Michael, in a strange way, they made him, a bell cow rusher where he got a lot of carries, but it didn't work out. Even though he got more carries, he actually had a career low in total rushing yards of 69. I am down on Kamara here. He's being priced really high relative to, I think, what he showed us last year.
Yeah, Alvin Kamara gets his fantasy points in bunches. He's done that for a couple of years now. Obviously, that means he's got a really high ceiling. So it's tempting to go with him in leagues where that it benefits. But in a daily league, I think you got to have that high floor, especially in cash. And I'm not sure ever since the Drew Brees retirement, his floor has maybe not been where it was in the past.
Yeah. So the guy I like more than Kamara at $500 cheaper than Kamara is Joe Mixon. Man, what does this guy have to do to get a little bit more respect? We know he is the bell cow running back. We know that he gets involved in the passing game. And what I think is so amazing about him is when they get around the goal line, they exclusively use him. They don't have a rushing quarterback in Joe Burrow. So they inside the 5 last year, he was the only player to get all rushing touchdowns inside the 5. Cincinnati is invested in an improved offensive line with 3 new starters. I like Joe Mixon here.
Yeah, that offensive line improvement was huge. I think that they will rely on the run even more this year to spare Burrow and make it a little bit easier for him in play action. So that's going to reward MIXON, who is their bell cow, back. And I think Pittsburgh has been somewhat weak against the run of late. So I think the $500 savings from KAMARA is tempting. If you're in a spot where you can't pick up two of those guys at the top, MIXON is a very nice high floor.
Yeah, and good game environment. Home favorite, 6.5 point favorite, 25.5 implied total. Let's move on to James Conner, who I think is an interesting pick. The concern I have, Michael, and you can let me know if you have it, is, well, is Kansas City going to just blow out Arizona? I know what the lines makers say, but it just feels like Arizona is they don't have Hopkins. They may not have Hollywood Brown. They traded Christian Kirk. They traded Chase Edmonds. So yes, that makes it very exciting for James Conner because they don't have a lot of other weapons. I just don't want the game script to get away from James Conner. But he's involved in a really high-scoring game, and they have a 25 implied total.
Yeah, well, he'll get involved in the passing game, which could save him from a fantasy perspective.
Let's quickly go to DeAndre Swift at $6,800. A lot depends on how good you think Detroit is going to be and whether that's a good thing or a bad thing. This is what happened last year with DeAndre Swift. At the beginning of the year, for the first half of the year, Detroit was absolutely dreadful. And he got game scripted out where he didn't get a lot of rushing. But he was huge in the passing game, which is very valuable on DraftKings. And then as the season went along, he got less pass attempts when game script didn't dictate that they were coming back from way behind. What do you think about Swift?
Well, I think he's, if I'm not mistaken, I think Jamal Williams has moved over to Detroit. That happened last year, right? And that really impacted things. And I think they have a couple of guys who could also get the ball at the goal line in addition to Swift. And so I'm a little concerned about how that might impact things.
All right. Aaron Jones is interesting because Devontae Adams is gone. And Devontae Adams, if you looked at games where they missed Devontae Adams, Aaron Jones always performed better than average because he gets more heavily involved in the pass game. Now, I know he shares time with A.J. Dillon, but I think the pie is big enough to at least consider Aaron Jones here at 6,700.
Yeah, no, I think that the pricing makes him really, really tempting. Seeing him this much further down the list makes me think that the pricing is going to be that much better. But, he's only a few $100 less than Joe Mixon. And I think we talked about why we like Mixon so much just a moment ago.
So I'm a hard no on Nick Chubb. Maybe this is because he was on my fantasy league team last year and he was such a disappointment. But not just that. Jacoby Brissett will be the quarterback, and I think that's going to hurt the entire offense. It will move less. Now, you might say, that's great, Eric. Jacoby Brissett, they're going to run more. Yeah, but they still have Kareem Hunt, and so is going to steal. And what I was surprised with is how much, you figure Nick Chubb, he does not get involved that much in the pass game, but you figure, by darn, he should have huge touchdown equity. But he's not a reliable touchdown hog. Not counting the games he missed, he scored only 20 of the last 37 touchdowns on Cleveland. So, look, they're guys, especially one that's $100 cheaper, that I like a ton more. So I'm a big no on Nick Chubb.
Yeah, it's surprising to see his pricing come here. But the other thing to recognize is that Carolina does have a very strong run defense. So that's something so I think with the Brissett quarterbacking and the defense they're going up against, I think Chubb's a no for this week.
All right. I don't understand it, Michael. How is Najee Harris only $6,400? Look, here's the deal, folks. I'll make it simple. Pittsburgh uses him all the time. How does that work out in the stats? Only 3 teams ran for fewer yards than Pittsburgh, but only 3 running backs ran for more yards than Harris. And the good news is, and they've improved their offensive line some. It's not great, but it's gone from horrible to, you know, slightly below average with 2 new offensive linemen. And guess who led all running backs in receptions last year? Najee Harris, because the guy just never leaves the field, Michael.
Yeah, I think he was 4th or 5th for the last 5, like 10 games of the season in terms of average PPR fantasy scoring. He should definitely not be this low. If you can get 2 guys from the top and Najee is your flex, woo, touchdown.
All right. I'm going to let you talk about the next guy because he's from your Raiders, Josh Jacobs. Tell me, 6,300, are you interested?
Well, the Chargers run defense wasn't very strong last year. I know this game is in LA. And Josh Jacobs should benefit from the Davante Adams addition in terms of less attention on him. Now it's about stopping the Raiders' pass game as opposed to the run game. His touches were up quite a bit last year. He did drop off towards the end of the season, and he wasn't involved in the passing game as much as you would have expected from a guy who played wide receiver in college last year. So I think he's definitely not as enticing as Najee Harris.
Yeah, and it concerns me. They're just there's so much competition in that backfield, specifically to catch passes. You know, they added Amir Abdullah and Brandon Bolden, both guys who've caught 30 passes in a season in previous years. So, yeah, I agree with you. Especially with Najee Harris, $100 more. I just can't imagine going with Josh Jacobs. Michael, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me 8,000 times, which is what Saquon Barkley has done. I don't know. I cannot justify starting him in week 1. Will he finally, become the running back he was many, many years ago? Maybe, but I'm going to wait and see. But one thing that concerns me, last year, Devontae Booker, his backup, performed better than Saquon Barkley, which, I go figure. So I'm a pass.
Well, there's a lot of haters on Barkley, and like you say, rightly so. He's been so frustrating. It's nice to see him finally getting priced a little bit more appropriately. I think the guy's a special talent. I think he has a ton of upside, but New York hasn't figured out how to get him right. And maybe that's his fault. Maybe that's their fault. But, paying up for a guy who has historically let you down is a recipe for depression. So
usually what's going to happen is things are going to open up if we hear an injury or things, because, of course, DraftKings put the salary out like 6 weeks or 5 weeks before the season starts, and they're not going to change it. But the 2 guys I want you to watch is Mike Davis at only $4,400. It looks like J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards is going to be out. The question is are they going to try to add another significant running back between now and when the season starts? If not, it looks like Mike Davis is going to be the lead back in an excellent matchup. Big favorite over the New York Jets, who don't have a good run defense last year.
I like that. That's a sneaky one. What's the other one?
The other one is Elijah Mitchell, $1,000 more at $5,400. I just want to know a lot more information about what his role is going to be. And are we concerned with Garoppolo to Lance with that change? Because Lance is going to run the ball far more than Garoppolo did. And are they going to stop doing this Deebo Samuels in the backfield thing? There's rumors that Samuels doesn't like it, but it was pretty successful last year. And are they going to try to do more of a committee with Jeff Wilson and their 2 recent 3rd-round backs? A lot of question marks about Mitchell, but if he becomes on good notice that he's the bell cow, wow, at 5,400, he is an interesting pick in a good game environment. All right, those are our running backs. You definitely want to check out our other 3 shows on quarterbacks, wide receivers, and tight ends, where we take a look at the DraftKings main slate week 1. Until we see you next time, take care, everybody.
Stay safe. Thanks.